You know, we hear the term affordable housing thrown around all the time, but what if I told you that the official legal definition has almost nothing to do with what you or I might actually call affordable? Today, we're going to decode what that label really means. So let's just jump right in with a real head-scratcher. How is it possible that an apartment that costs nearly $2,700 a month can be legally, officially called affordable housing? And not just anywhere, but in one of the wealthiest parts of Connecticut. It just sounds wrong, right? Well, that's the exact question we're going to answer. And this isn't some made-up number. We are talking about a real-world rent, $2,695 per month. This number, it's really at the heart of all the confusion. And by the end of this, I promise you'll know exactly how a number this high gets that official, affordable stamp of approval.
Okay, so where do these rules even come from? The whole system, the whole shebang, is based on limits set by one federal agency, HUD. That's the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And here is the most important part to remember. HUD calculates everything on a regional level. That regional focus, as you're about to see, is the absolute key to solving our puzzle.
So first things first, let's pop the hood and decode the HUD rulebook. We've got to understand the exact formula that decides how a home gets this affordable label in the first place. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with this one little acronym, AMI. It stands for Area Median Income. Think of it as the official benchmark, the yardstick set by HUD, and it's what determines who's eligible for housing help all across the country.
So here's where things get tricky, and it's the number one misconception. AMI is a big, broad regional benchmark. It's pulled from census data. But what AMI is not is actually way more important for us to understand. It is not based on your specific town, it's not based on the actual wages people are earning there, and it's not based on what it actually costs to rent an apartment or buy a house locally. This disconnect, this is the whole game right here.
Okay, so HUD takes that big regional AMI number and slices it into three main tiers. You've got low income, which is for households earning up to 80% of that AMI. Then there's very low income, that's up to 50%. And finally, extremely low income for folks at or below 30%. These are the official brackets, everyone has to use them.
And this leads to this kind of one-size-fits-all system that has some pretty huge consequences. The rule is shockingly simple. If your household income qualifies you in any part of a HUD region, you are automatically considered qualified in every single town in that entire region. Doesn't matter if it's the wealthiest suburb or the most industrial city, one number fits all.
So how does this one number, many towns idea actually create a problem? You know, this big mismatch. Let's stop talking theory and look at the hard numbers to see it in action.
Okay, let's use a real-world example from Fairfield County, Connecticut. For a family of 4, the low-income limit, remember that's the 80% tier, means the maximum household income is $107,850. Just let that number sink in for a second.
And this chart, wow, it just shows the disconnect perfectly. On the one hand, you've got the HUD's low-income limit, right around $108,000. But on the other hand, look at the actual median income in a typical town in that same county. It can be way up over $175,000. So affordability isn't measured against the local reality, it's measured against that much lower regional number. All right, so how does that income limit suddenly turn into a rent price? Well, the rule is that an affordable rent can't be more than 30% of a household's income. So you take that big $107,850 low-income number, and 30% of that comes out to about, yep, you guessed it, $2,695 a month. And there it is. That's our number from the very beginning. It might feel like a normal market rate rent, but according to the law, that is officially affordable.
So now we can finally connect all the dots. Now we can see the real impact of this massive disconnect between the regional number and the local reality. This is the why behind those numbers that just don't seem to make any sense.
You know, when most of us hear affordable housing, we picture it being for the people who already live and work in our community, right? The teachers, the firefighters, the folks who work at the local grocery store. It's a really common sense idea. But the cold, hard legal reality is completely different. Affordable housing isn't about local residents. It's for any household that meets a regional income threshold. That one word, regional, that's the whole story. It doesn't matter if you work in the town, it only matters if your paycheck fits into that big regional bucket.
And this is where the system creates a huge challenge in the real world. Because of this regional definition, essential local workers, think teachers, nurses, firefighters, they can get totally stuck. They often earn too much to qualify for these officially affordable units, but they still don't earn nearly enough to afford the regular market-rate houses or apartments in the very town where they work. This is exactly what people mean when they talk about the missing middle housing problem.
So, look, if you take just one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Affordable housing in a place like Connecticut is defined by those big, regional HUD income averages. It is not defined by a town's own income levels, not by local wages, and definitely not by local housing prices.
Which brings us right back to where we started. Now that you know the rules of the game, now that you see how that nearly $2,700 a month apartment gets its affordable label, does that word really mean what you thought it did? It's something to think about.